Yeehaw! Welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone. A show where we, the students of S.H.I.E.L.D., read through the infamous 1990s Clone Saga. I'm Billy.
I'm Matt.
I'm Mike.
And I am Vincent.
And the sponsor for this week's episode will be the great song Red Red Wine by UD40. Check it out if you haven't heard it.
Yep. Go download it on iTunes for... How much are iTunes songs now? $1.29?
$1.29. That one's pretty hot right now. It might be a $2.25er.
Yeah. So thanks to our sponsor. This week we are talking about tying issues to the dreaded, divisive, hated, and over-bloated Onslaught.
Yeah, I don't know how divisive it is. I think people are pretty much on one side of the argument here.
So Spider-Man has 3 tie-in issues to Onslaught. Actually, give me half a second. I should have better prepared this. But behind me, I have the Onslaught Omnibus.
Oh my god.
And so I can tell you that I don't think, the Spider-Man issues are in here. At least Amazing Spider-Man. But Green Goblin also ties in, but we did not read that issue.
Yeah, thank God.
So 3 tie-in issues to Onslaught, and on a scale of 1 to 5, pretend you care about Onslaught and you're reading Onslaught. On a scale of 1 to 5, how relevant are these issues?
Pretty non-relevant.
Yeah, can we go lower than 1?
Yeah, it's like a 0. There's no connection to the main plot of Onslaught. Like Spider-Man, like all the characters in these issues have no idea what's going on, and they don't intersect with any of the main plot. So on that note, our first issue is Amazing Spider-Man 415. Tom DeFalco writing it, Mark Bagley drawing it, and this issue opens. I was already off guard from this first page because it's narration of Peter Parker rattling off his problems, but just in the middle of it, or is, oh, my wife's pregnancy, but everything else is an unquestionably negative recent development in his life. So I'm like, Marvel writers, what are you trying to do here?
Yes, it's definitely framed like their little bundle of joy as a problem.
They're setting the seeds, Vince.
Setting the seeds for what? Their child to be eaten by a madman?
Yes.
But he can't moan about how shitty his life is because a sentinel shows up to try and kill him. So he grabs his pregnant wife and jumps 30 feet into the air repeatedly.
As you do.
And they get out of the way. And also, he doesn't have his costume. His powers aren't really reliable at this point. So we do get a quick throwaway line where MJ's like, hey, are you concerned about your secret identity? And he's like, everyone's going crazy. No one's going to care.
And I don't know if this is just me, but I felt like the dialogue in this issue was even more stilted and unnatural than usual. I don't think a lot of the dialogue worked at all.
I'm not sure. I noticed at least 2 lettering errors in this episode, which that's just me being nitpicky, and it's only 2 across 3 issues. But I feel like possibly just because of the fact that it's a crossover, some of this may have been rushed or definitely rewritten or editorially messed with and everything like that.
For sure.
And I mean, also on the other hand, it's like DeFalco he's kind of fallen off at this point. But I don't know, because then again, people loved his Spider-Girl, which launches a few years after this for years. So who knows? I think for sure, probably all the writers involved with this just weren't feeling any enthusiasm, except for maybe DeZago, because he just got gifted the best artist. And so Pete he quickly saves a little girl from a stampede, whatever. And then Sentinels attack Daily Bugle. And it's not really fully explained why, but I want to imagine that Onslaught like doesn't want the press reporting on the bullshit he's doing.
I think Jonah implies that later, which it doesn't. I don't know how much sense that makes, but fine.
And we're getting some annoying Clone Saga recap in particularly this issue, but also in the other ones. And I guess that's because for a long time we had crazy recaps on every issue, even within the same crossover. But for a little bit, I feel like that's been toned down noticeably, but it's right back. And I guess at this point, they're hoping that people pick up the tie-in because they see the stupid little Onslaught in the corner. So if you missed the past year and a half of Spider-Man stories across 5 titles, here's a page of recap.
Okay. I don't want to say missed, because you didn't miss anything.
Right. You made the wise choice to not read it, unlike the 4 of us.
Then Ben gets in costume while the Daily Grind folks go in the basement. And then I know Mike was a fan of this sequence.
Oh, the forced guardian angel story? Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. The owner of the Daily Grind, Shirley, she starts reminiscing about the good old days of duck and cover. And so we have a parallel between Onslaught and nuclear war at the height of the Cold War.
Which I guess it's supposed to be deep or mean something, but it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Nothing in the Clone Saga means anything.
You know where I thought she was going to go with this? When she just said, like, started with, like, oh, a man that wanted to bomb us. I thought she was going to take it back to, like, Birmingham, Alabama in the 1950s and 60s. I thought that's where it was going to go with it. I was so happy it didn't go there because that'd be even more forced.
Onslaught is just like the KKK. And so while they're swinging around and definitely causing pregnancy complications, Pete and MJ joke about their child, and they use different pronouns. So this happens before we actually get the footnote later because it comes relevant in the next issue. But this is back because the sensational issues with Ringo, as we mentioned last episode, they kind of weave through this so that we could segment things up better. So they don't know the gender of their baby yet. But the big development here is that a Sentinel notes that there is something unique about the fetus. Maybe it has powers, maybe it's enhanced, something like that.
Maybe someday we'll find out.
Yeah. Matt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you would best answer this question.
I can try.
Is Mayday a mutant?
No. No.
Okay. Because
he does not have the X gene.
Okay, yeah. So it's just passed along his powers because of his screwed up DNA.
Because of his radioactive spider semen.
Yep.
Radioactive blood.
Yeah.
Because she definitely
listen, bud. No, keep going. I'm not gonna do that.
I was like, are we gonna do the whole theme or not?
No.
Decide that.
I started and then it was a really, really bad idea.
She definitely does use web shooters, obviously.
Yeah.
They didn't make that dumb decision.
And Ben's costume.
Yes.
Looks better on her.
It does.
But the Sentinel basically gives up, and it's kind of it's not actually written as funny, but you can interpret it as funny because that's what they should have done. Because the Sentinel is just like, oh, this idiot's powers are failing, so he's no longer a remote threat, so I'll just go away, and someone will get him later. And then my favorite scene in maybe this full episode is Jonah is in the Daily Bugle newsroom and has an awesome speech where he's like, I'm not going home. These Sentinels aren't going to stop me. Nothing will stop the presses. And their computers aren't
old typewriters.
And it's like this hype scene. and then it's shitty in retrospect with other Daily Bugle developments as we go along.
Yeah, I think this scene was good. I think it could have been a lot more impactful if it was written by somebody who was a good writer. But this, I would agree, it was an enjoyable part of the episode, for what it's worth.
And then it's funnier because like the very next scene in the Daily Bugle, he's talking to Robbie and he's like, "Oh, those people really look up to me," and it brings his characterization all the way around, where it's like Jonah. I mean, even though the Bugle is kind of a tabloid, like he totally is a serious newspaper man, and he really cares about his work. But he's also just totally full of himself and a jerk. And that's why Jonah is amazing character.
Yes.
And all of the people in the Bugle, they look outside to see the Green Goblin fighting the Sentinel. And I was disappointed we didn't get like anything more of that. He doesn't even get a line. I was expecting like a 5-page like subplot. But again, we skipped that issue.
Yeah, that's in a different tie-in. You gotta go read that one if you want to find out about the Green Goblin.
Yep, go read Green Goblin number 12, also written by Tom DeFalco.
You don't have to.
And it was the second to last issue. The series is canceled with number 13. And as one might expect from a Spider-Man spinoff, the final issue, it has him with his costume on the ground, kind of like Spider-Man No More kind of deal. Also, all along this way, with Onslaught, this Onslaught conflict going on, across New York, there are riots and looting, and that basically just, it pumps up the whole Daily Bugle, like they have to cover this as well, and it gives us like a few tiny scenes with Pete and Ben stopping people, which most of them aren't even worth noting. And Pete and MJ show up to the Bugle, and he's like, hand me a camera. And it's not clear. Like I thought, oh, he's going to use that as just the cover, and he'll make a makeshift mask and try and save some people. But no, he actually kind of just does want to take photos. That's not what he ends up doing, but that's basically his intention.
Mm-hmm.
And MJ wants to proofread because she could write, but her typing is rusty. And I don't know, that's funny. I mean, I guess
it is.
I guess if you work at a newspaper, like words per minute is actually important. But I guess I was thinking from a perspective of like, this is 1990. I mean, it's 1996, but even still, what percentage of the population works with computers like 9 to 5 in 96? Like I'm not sure. It still might not be like everyone and their mother like it is a few years later. And then this issue ends with, I think, a cool scene where Ben picks up a manhole cover and swings it, which is always cool to see Spider-Man do. Obviously, that's the ending of Amazing Spider-Man 2, right? Or is it 1?
2.
Yeah, with the Rhino, and that's like the only good scene of that entire movie. But Ben swings this manhole cover through a Sentinel's face and then runs over and like rips the Sentinel's head in half.
And that's a really cool image. The image of Spider-Man ripping the head in half. Also, because there's practically no detail on the costume, you can almost pretend like it's Pete.
Yeah.
So let's move into Spider-Man 72. And there's like a thing on the cover that says it is this month's must-read Marvel comic.
I saw that. I was like, oh no, it's not.
And I like tried for like half a minute to research that and see if that was like a little ticker that they used each month on different titles. But in my limited research, I couldn't find another issue that had that on it.
Vince,
I kind of hope it was a thing they did.
On the covers, they say Onslaught Impact 2. What does that exactly mean?
So there are like different phases of Onslaught.
Oh my
Okay.
god.
So there's like Impact 1, Impact 2. Because it's really long. But the thing is, Onslaught is one of those crossovers where there are so many tie-ins and everything, but really only like 2 series are remotely relevant, as you would imagine. It's the X-Men stuff and the Avenger stuff. And even still, and we get footnotes to this issue in these issues. There's an oversized issue called Onslaught Marvel Universe, and basically like 50% of the plot of the event takes place in like 48 pages of that issue. And I think there's like a similar like opening kind of one. It's probably called like an alpha issue or some shit. And so really and this is the size of the book, by the way.
That's gross.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. But like most of the plot happens in like 4 of these issues.
Good lord.
So why own the whole book, Vincent?
Because it has lots of X-Men issues that aren't collected elsewhere. And so Onslaught was a huge, like it was a long tail tease.
I mean, at least the Age of Apocalypse like moves more than 4 issues.
So these are slightly mistitled because they're not entirely what they are claimed to be.
Oh, these 3 Titanic paperbacks.
Here are 3 Road to Onslaught volumes, because Onslaught was teased like almost 2 years before the event.
I feel sick.
Is Onslaught teased like right after what is that story? Fatal Attractions?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much, like not quite, but Onslaught does. Okay, yeah, it's sort of on the cover. So Onslaught, real quick, because we haven't really said what Onslaught is.
Yeah, probably should do that.
Not worth getting into that much. But in Fatal Attractions, this dumb X-Men crossover, which was more or less around Uncanny X-Men 300, the big deal, it's not really important what happens in Fatal Attractions, except for this moment, which this is like a more kind of modern take on it, and the glare, whatever. Magneto rips the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, which is like this major moment where it's like, oh my god, that's crazy, because it's a crazy feat for Magneto. And also it revealed the bone claws, the infamous bone claws.
Yeah, arguably
Also
one of the
question-
biggest mistakes that Marvel has made with the X-Men, I think.
Yep.
But it's one of those things that always makes me go, why didn't Magneto just do that before?
Because, I don't know, he was very angry.
Yeah, like it's one of those things like yeah, and then we got noseless Wolverine for a few years.
I don't know.
Well-
It's superhero comics. You can't think too hard about it. Like, why doesn't he just tear Colossus into little tiny pieces? Just don't. It's fine.
Well, that's organic metal, not metal.
He to control it.
Well,
Don't matter.
this is the point where Magneto is totally a villain again, because obviously for like really almost like, I don't know, I was about to make up a number of years, but for a huge chunk of Chris Claremont's run on X-Men, Magneto was a good guy. He was in charge of the New Mutants and just straight up a good guy with them. And it's really with the relaunch, it's not really a relaunch, the spin-off Adjectiveless X-Men book where he becomes a villain again. And then the Adjectiveless X-Men issue that's part of Fatal Attractions is 25. So you're like 2 years after that, probably less, because they were probably shipping a little fast. But it's not that much far off from that, so he's still a villain at this point. And so it's supposed to be like one of his craziest feats ever. And Professor Xavier, Charles freaks the hell out, and he's like, all right, let me just put Magneto in a coma real quick. That's his solution to seeing such a fucked up moment. And then
Chuck is an asshole.
yeah, and Chuck also, yeah, again, is an asshole, and he has all these weird moments, a lot of them in the past, but also in the present, where he just has terrible moments of judgment. He totally manipulates people. He creeps on teenage girls and stuff like that. And so Onslaught is this weird, nonsensical, like mutant mental manifestation of the dark recesses of Charles Xavier's mind combined with Magneto's rage. And its motivation, I don't know what it is. It's to kill mutants and humans or something.
I hate
It's
comics.
just a big bad.
I hate comics.
It's a really hard boss in Capcom's Marvel superheroes.
Yeah, I bet.
But also, jumping back, I wanted to make the correction. Wolverine, noseless Wolverine, common misconception. He doesn't go feral and noseless after getting his adamantium ripped off. He gets his adamantium ripped off in Wolverine number 75. And then there's an arc through from literally all the way from 75 through 100 where he is trying to get his adamantium back. But he has the bone claws, but he's totally normal. And then in 100, they try and put his adamantium back, and it fails. And that failure causes his body to overreact. It's like it's supposed to be like rejecting a transplant kind of thing. And that's when he goes feral and noseless from like 100 to like 120. And then Larry Hama finally leads the book after like 90 issues. And then there's a totally throwaway Warren Ellis arc.
Interesting.
Not dead yet. So enough of X-Men stuff that's, again, not relevant. But that's the kind of the background for Onslaught and what spins out of it and everything. And we'll get to some of the other ramifications as we go on the other side. Because Onslaught, the crossover, technically it's called Avengers X-Men Onslaught. Similar to Avengers X-Men Axis. And I'm not sure which crossover is worse.
But stay tuned in like 5 years when we have a new Onslaught podcast.
Yeah, we may do that. But
it's mapped out.
Yeah. The impact thing and stuff, like I can literally just page through this book and write down the order of the issues, obviously. But the problem is if and when we want to go crazy with it and go back to all those other appearances and stuff. And so it's a little bit more of a complicated read in order to split it up. But we'll figure it
out. Off air, we took a vote. It was, do we want to do No Man's Land, Crisis, or Onslaught? Crisis and No Man's Land won, and we're only doing Crisis right now.
Well, that's why it's 5 years later.
Exactly.
So back to the actual issue, Spider-Man 72. Creative team here is Howard Mackie and John Romita Jr. And I thought this first page was really great. It's kind of covered by this terrible recap narration. But if none of that recap was there, I thought this would be a really, really cool page. It's just Pete in his civvies climbing a fire escape to get like a good vantage point for photography.
Yeah.
And Romita's using like a little bit. And it's weird because, and this goes back to, we talked about the inconsistency in these issues for this episode. And I think that plays in this issue as well with Romita. And so some of the pages, he's a little bit looser, a little bit more of his like jaggedy thing. And some of them, and like it works in the advantage of some pages, and some pages look like shit.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see Romita's pencils for this page without the captions all over it.
Yeah. Like I'm pretty sure all the captions are just like recap, moaning, here's what happened in the Clone Saga. Repeated. Like they're not a single one of those captions are really necessary for telling this story at hand. And as I was saying, then the next page, it's this splash page of a bunch of Sentinels walking around the streets because Pete's up high. And it's supposed to be, I guess it's supposed to be cool. But I thought this splash page looked terrible. And especially the Sentinels look super derpy. And
there's the one that's like kind of flying in the background, but it looks like it's doing a belly flop onto a building.
Yep.
And then we have one of our recurring bullshit triggers, because Peter Parker's spider sense goes off, but like he specifically says that it goes off because Spider-Man is there. Ben swings by and he's like, "Oh, it's my spider sense," and obviously that's bullshit. Then again, like way back in the very beginning, I think weren't their spider senses sort of going off for each other, and they were trying to play up some like dumb connection, like mental or like power-based connection that they never followed through with.
I can't remember. I've already blocked out memories of early Clone Saga.
No, that is the thing that happened.
Yeah. And so Ben almost gets killed by a sentinel. So Peter throws a brick, which is a cool moment. He's like, "I gotta save my bro." But then, of course, Pete, and I didn't understand this panel because it totally looks like Pete gets blasted by like hand lasers. The whole panel's like bright blue.
It looks like he just gets murdered, but apparently he's fine.
Unfortunately.
Because then Ben saves him back, and there's another great panel of Ben swinging, holding Peter, and it's from an aerial shot. And in this panel, the city below is detailed and it looks nice, whereas the splash pages earlier looked all undetailed and washed out. Mm-hmm. And Ben gets conveniently knocked unconscious mid-swing. And I didn't understand this later either. I mean, I guess Sentinels are similar to Iron Man, where it's more like repulsor rays, but Ben totally just takes a laser to the face, which I think that is the moment which like rips the entire back of his costume off. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how that impact point worked at all. And then, of course, later in the issue, Romita just kind of ignores that his costume is supposed to be ripped up. But it's a cool scene where Ben's unconscious, they're free falling, and Pete's like, "Oh shit, I gotta use his web shooters real quick." And where do they end up?
In the sewer?
Sort of, not quite yet.
They fall in a smokestack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
Which is like, we're back with more smokestacks.
How did I not realize that?
The only thing more recurring in the Clone Saga, other than obviously clones and destroying chimneys, are smokestacks.
Yeah, or at least references, and they just like make weird jokes again about each other, and it's like it kind of comes off hostile for a second.
It definitely does. Not even kind
of. Ben wakes up and he's like, "Oh, a smokestack, like where you left me to be incinerated." And then kind of, sort of, it's a smokestack, so kind of, sort of, they damage a chimney, sort of, and end up in the sewers somehow, or like piping with water in it.
Well, because I'm not a smokestack expert, but I'm pretty sure there's a smokestack, and they have an entrance to the sewer where you dump the smoke, the excess smoke that doesn't go out the stack.
Yeah, I don't.
Sewer.
I guess it's like a refinery plant, and they're in like giant tubing. It doesn't make sense. But they're now hanging out in the sewers, and then like the next like significant chunk of the end of this issue and part of the next issue is just Spider-Man in the sewers, which I think is hilarious because like I like skimmed through the Clone Saga before, so I've always associated Spider-Man's involvement with Onslaught that he just hangs out in the sewers and doesn't interact with anyone else. And I wish I had 100% kept that impression, but I was pretty close.
Yeah, not bad.
And Ben tells Pete to fuck off, and Pete's like, "Okay," and he like explicitly, it's like super forced. He's like, "Oh yeah, because he's Spider-Man, the real hero." And they're really trying to put over Ben Reilly right before they murder him. And, like, 3 months. And again, cool action scene right at the end of this issue. And both of them get a cool action scene. Ben has this big pipe and just smashes through a Sentinel's wrist with this pipe. But he gets grabbed or something. And so Pete, he fucked off, but then quickly didn't fuck off because he decapitates a Sentinel and then uses its head as a ball and chain to knock off other Sentinel's head. And that was pretty awesome. And then right back into the sewers. And I love how this issue ends because it's like a straight up acknowledgement of this whole chunk of issues where it's Ben and Peter running through the sewers. And they're like, hey, I heard the X-Men and the Avengers are involved with this. We should go try and find the fight. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. We have no idea what's going on though. And I think after this issue is where the Sensational slides in. And I think that's where Pete and MJ learn that their baby is a girl. And I guess some swarm stuff happens during this. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently in the middle of Onslaught, Pete and MJ go and find out the sex of their baby. While the world is ending? I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
But the best part is, again, at the end of this issue, they're like, let's go find the fight and join the event, our buddies on the Avengers and X-Men. And they never do that. And we get a footnote to that one-shot Marvel Universe Onslaught. And Spider-Man does not appear in that issue at all.
They got lost on the way.
So he's basically not in the actual crossover at all. Which is kind of...
That's pretty rare for Spider-Man not to be involved.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to say not exactly at this time, but also like he has a super prominent role in the first two Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2.
But also his books are bad.
Definitely at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like any of the other books were good. I mean, I'll just name some of the other books that tied in. Cable, which is being written by Jeff Loeb. In fact, Cable 32 through 36.
Christ.
Uncanny X-Men is being written by Mark Waid at this point, I believe.
Yeah, we talked about that a few episodes ago.
X-Force, also Jeff Loeb. X-Man, also Jeff Loeb. We got X-Man 15 through 19.
That's so much X-Man.
X-Men. The Avengers book is awful at this point. I think it's written by like Terry Kavanaugh. In fact, I think Mark Waid is also in the Avengers at this point because Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo's Avengers 400 is included in the paperbacks for the Fantastic Four run for no reason.
Yeah, it is.
Fantastic Four is DeFalco. It's terrible at this point. Hulk, we got 2 issues of Hulk by Peter David. Hulk has the best moments in Onslaught. Well, really just one moment. He is the coolest moment. Wolverine is shit. X Factor might be the very end of DeMatteis' run, which is just a continuation of what Peter David did. The Spider-Man books, Green Goblin. Iron Man is awful at this point. It's Teen Tony. The Punisher. Yeah. I'm not sure who was writing that Punisher issue.
Punisher's on his way to becoming an avenging demon.
No, that's
I mean, that's years later, but like, come on, the book wasn't probably good at this point anyway.
Thor is trash. Yeah, so every book in the Marvel line is trash at this point. And all right, so let's move into Amazing Spider-Man 416.
Yes,
and, what?
Nothing.
Did you say okay, so do you guys like this cover?
No.
It's all right, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's stupid that this cover like has to exist, like surrounded by Onslaught, but it's a fine cover. So it's Spidey solemnly standing on Statue of Liberty's torch with silhouettes of the Fantastic Four, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. And this is DeFalco again. It's Amazing Spider-Man, but Bagley's busy or something. He's doing something. So Ron Garney draws this issue. And I thought that was going to be a cool surprise, but it just looks generic and like not good.
It looks like Ron Garney trying to do Bagley.
Yeah, maybe. So Onslaught is done. Everyone is cleaning up. Lots of Sentinel heads on the ground to pick up. And there are these people like loading crates. And I thought they were going to go for like a MCU Chitauri technology kind of thing, where it's like certain companies are grabbing up Sentinel pieces. And a gang tries to attack them and rob the crates. But Spidey jumps in, and it turns out everyone involved is a criminal. And the crates are just guns. And it doesn't have anything to do with Onslaught, which is weird.
Yeah.
And a police officer thanks Spider-Man for being alive.
Great.
And we have we see someone reading the newspaper, and it says, everyone is fucking dead. All the characters you like, except for Spider-Man, and the Spider-Man books don't star Spider-Man.
Yeah, except for Spider-Man, but you don't like him either at this point, so...
Wait, so as someone who has not read Onslaught, who all dies in that?
Everyone.
Basically, all the major Avengers and all the Fantastic Four. So that leaves the X-Men, Spider-Man, and like C and D list people.
So, I'm sorry, so the X-Men caused the problem, and then they're okay. They just kill everyone else.
Yep.
That's great.
Well, but their book was selling still.
Right.
The Avengers and Fantastic Four were spiraling downward. And then we have the Rose, which was he fully revealed actually at the end of when we last saw him?
I believe so.
Because I remember there were super obvious teases, but I think he was revealed.
You're
And
still on the scene now.
his annoying sidekick Delilah with terrible lettering.
I hate her.
And the Rose is talking about his feud with Don Fortunato, which is this whole mob subplot we've been following. And Squire shows up and rips off his face, which is, I guess, supposed to be mysterious.
Sure.
And then we'll get back to the Rose in a second, but Ron Garney includes a tribute to Rick Leonardi on a billboard, which I thought was weird because Leonardi has no involvement in this book. He might be like slightly throwing shade / tributing him because the 2099 line is dead right now, and Leonardi drew Spider-Man 2099 for pretty much the entire way. So
Vince, what's going on at the Bugle?
The Bugle's downsizing, and they're laying off 100 people.
Which is great because basically the Daily Bugle story in this episode is Jonah goes, guys, you don't have to stay. It's a great impassioned speech about the importance of journalism. People stay and risk their lives for the news. And he goes, okay, now you're all fired. Go home.
Yeah, I'm hoping everyone stayed until like 11 that night and then got up and came on time, and then they got fired at 9 a.m. And one of the people who gets fired is Jacob Conover. And I think he was mentioned like very briefly an episode or two ago. But do any of you guys know who the fuck this guy is?
Apparently he runs his own column called Conover's Corner.
Which supervillain does he become? With an exit like this, definitely becomes supervillain.
He does become a supervillain, but I'm not going to spoil it because it's only in like 2 episodes from now.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
His whole arc, I believe, should finish up before the Clone Saga finishes.
Cool.
Okay, but the real question is, once he's defeated, does he have a child that also becomes a supervillain?
He's a legacy villain, I'll say that.
Son of a bitch.
But
It's a new Sandman.
He was first introduced in Daredevil 131, the same first appearance as Bullseye, because Jacob Conover interviews the Bullseye as he shows up on the scene as a villain.
Is he the new Scarecrow?
What?
Is he
No, he's not
Scarecrow?
Scarecrow. No.
Okay, is he? He can't be Mr. Hyde. He can't be Owl.
I don't want to play. I don't want to play this guessing game. I want
to play it.
It's not a Daredevil villain. It's a sort of a Spider-Man villain. So,
well, I'm not a Daredevil villain, other than Frogman. So,
Scryer returns the gaunt. I already said that. Oops. So the Rose is Richard Fisk, and I mean we already talked about him a little bit last time, but we get some backstory on his several identities, and now I'll throw it to Matt.
Yeah, so Richard Fisk originally was a schemer, and the schemer I just finished talking about on Spider Bites, thank God, because it's so stupid. His design is terrible, and he wears one of those like masks that look like someone else's face somehow perfectly. To look like yeah, exactly. To look like a middle-aged man, and he sucks. And when he reveals himself, he put the Kingpin into a coma, which is kind of funny. But it's also the most what?
Because it's his dad.
Oh boy!
Yeah, because his dad.
5-0.
So then he sucks, but he gets better because the Rose are kind of cool.
Well, he becomes the Rose, and then he's the schemer, then the Rose, then what is it, Blood Rose, and now he's
Blood
back.
Rose. Yeah, because at some point everyone put blood in their name. It was the 90s.
If only Spider-Man did, that would have saved this crossover.
The Blood Spider. No, the Blood Spider.
Right, that's better.
Yeah.
And so Pete gets laid off from his staff position at the Bugle. But Robbie's like, we'll keep giving you freelance gigs.
Yeah.
And he gets to keep his medical coverage for an entire year, which is pretty convenient.
Robbie straight up tells him, yeah, you don't have the full-time, like you're not full-time anymore, but you're going to be up to your neck in freelance gigs anyway. So really, Peter's not getting fired at all.
Right. For all intents and purposes, really nothing has changed for Pete right now.
It's actually, arguably, he might have more work now.
He just loses his benefits a year from now.
Yes.
When things will probably settle out.
And I guess the salary job.
And Ben runs across two kids fighting about Onslaught's fallout. And it kind of boils down to an Avengers versus X-Men argument, which is funny. But it's really more like the one kid just hates mutants.
Go ahead, Vince. Take that hardcover off the shelves, too, to show us, because you've done every other book tonight.
I don't have Avengers versus X-Men hardcover. In fact, I don't think I own the series at all.
Wow, that's a book I have that you don't.
I mean, I got to get it eventually, but...
I mean, I have the hardcover and the companion.
Oh, wow.
That's unfortunate.
It is. but you can murder someone with the companion.
And then I'll let Mike and Billy pick this up because I have negative input. There's a Power Rangers reference.
Yeah, for some reason.
Okay, what is it? I didn't even...
Okay, so Ben just comes down in between these kids fighting, and this says, "Are you two playing Power Rangers Zeo, or is this Rumble for real?" And it doesn't make sense. It's just so forced.
It's only forced because they say the whole thing as it like putting Zeo on the end of it, which is what makes it funny.
So does Ben watch Power Rangers?
I guess.
I mean, obviously Tom DeFalco clearly just like half paid attention to whatever his kids were watching on Saturday morning while he was writing the script. Like, oh, what are the kids watching these days?
Wait, does Ben have a TV at this point?
Yes, he's had a TV.
Okay. I keep forgetting whether or not he has a TV.
Jessica gave it to him.
Yeah, and then she disappeared off the face of the earth.
The whole subplot of Ben Riley having the fact that there's a subplot about Ben Riley owning or not owning a TV is really just indicative of this entire era.
Melodrama.
Is it?
Do you think Ben would watch The Good Doctor or God Friended Me?
No, he spends all his time playing Power Rangers Zeo.
He knows all the Power Rangers lore.
Here's the thing. Would you rather watch Power Rangers Zero or The Good Doctor or God Friended Me?
No.
Gun to your head, choose one.
So Ben runs across these two kids having an argument and decides, let me grab them and swing them through the air.
Let me kidnap these children real quick.
Well, and I don't know to say, this kidnapping went a lot better than Lindsay Lohan's this weekend.
I don't know what you're
I
talking.
don't.
Did Lindsay?
Okay, well, right, I'll explain it. Lindsay Lohan was in Russia last weekend, and she thought two boys were human traffic victims, and she tried to grab them from her parents, and then she got punched in the face, and she Facebook Live the whole thing.
Nice.
Okay.
That's actually pretty fun.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And so Ben just gives them a speech while giving them a skyline tour, I guess. And there are inset panels in remembrance of those we have lost. And so it's like Cap gets his own panel, Thor, Iron Man, Fantastic Four slotted together, which makes sense. And then just the other Avengers that no one cares about.
Hawkeye, Wasp, and Giant Man.
Yep. And whatever. And then Pete comes home to MJ, and at first he's deciding, I'm just going to hide this news from her, which is not a good move.
Not a good move, dude.
When you're married and your wife is pregnant. And MJ is like, it's okay. It's the 90s. Job security is as dead as disco.
Which she's used it's the 90s thing again. Like, that's not an excuse for everything.
Also, disco never dies. So.
Okay, all right. But Mike, is it not an excuse when we say it's 2018 all the time? It's the same thing. So
wait a minute. This all makes sense now. It's the 90s was that version of it's 2018.
Yeah. And
whoa.
Wow, Mike.
What a revelation you just had.
We do get a big development here because we have a proposed name for the baby. MJ wants to name her May after Aunt May. And I don't think she'll officially get to name the baby. I mean, she just did, but like, she won't fully get to.
No, I don't think so. And honestly, I thought this was a cute moment. The ghost of Aunt May hovering over Pete's shoulder was entirely unnecessary. But other than that, this is a cute moment.
I thought she was back alive for a second.
Well, I think it was just like it wasn't pulled off well with the scripting and the art. Like they could have done silhouette of Aunt May, but just like chest up, like and larger and like directly behind him. Instead, we get a full profile shot of her.
You want large-chested Aunt May? What?
We get a full body shot of Aunt May and dialogue. And I guess it's flashback and it's supposed to show like her character, which Pete wants his daughter to reflect, but it's not really necessary. All you needed to show was explicitly, oh, Aunt May was an important part of my life, blah, blah.
Like a Ramita Senior style floating head would be perfect.
Yeah. And
just use a picture of George Washington. It's it's the same thing.
Gaunt and Scryer are being spied on. Billy, who is spying on them?
My fucking OG girl from this series, Chakra, the best character we've ever seen.
Dude, she looks in that panel. She looks exactly like Raven, though.
Dude,
the panel
she's totally a knockoff of Raven, but what you're not understanding is that she's great.
The panel with binoculars, which is creeping on him like this, is one of my favorite things I think I've ever seen in ever.
I literally thought, what is Raven doing in this book and then I remember, and then when the Judas Traveler showed up, Judas Traveler shows up, everybody.
Yeah, because
our good old friend.
It's not directly in sequence, so I was like, who the fuck is that? And I was like, oh, it's Judas Traveler's people, like 10 pages later.
I'm really disappointed in you guys because I saw her and I knew right away that was Chakra, and I knew right away Billy was very excited about that.
Well, what I see, here's the thing: whenever we see Chakra, she's always like lit up and like glowing and shit. That's why I didn't see her.
Right.
And so Ben finishes his lecture, drops the kids off on a rooftop, and they ask him, first of all, they're like, oh, Daily Bugle's full of shit. You're an all right guy. And then the kid is like, how are you coping with losing your friends? Which, first of all, I mean, are any, besides the Fantastic Four, which is a major part, but would you call Spider-Man, pretend that it is 1996 and there haven't been a billion crossovers yet, and forced like characterization, everyone wants to fuck each other. Is Spider-Man friends with Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor?
No.
I don't even think he is now. Not really.
I mean, he was in JMS's run.
Yeah. Well, Marvel tries to play up that literally everyone is friends, kind of at this point.
Everyone is friends. Even. Well, when they're not killing each other, they're friends.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Part of that is kind of inevitable because it's like, even once you get to the 90s, it's like, even characters, villains that you associate with certain characters, like by the mid 90s, everyone has met everyone at least once.
Sure.
But I would not, like, Spider-Man doesn't really honestly care about Captain America that much.
Yeah, I don't even, if Nick Spencer in Amazing Spider-Man #8 or whatever had Peter Parker hanging out with Tony Stark or Steve Rogers like they're pals, I think that'd be weird. I don't think they're really that close.
It'd be weird too, considering that New Avengers is so long ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Right.
But we do get a specific highlight on Johnny Storm, which is cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he doesn't actually address his loss at all within this issue. Like, he's just like, they'll always be in my heart. And it's at the very end, talking to this kid, but we don't see any actual like inner turmoil. Granted, it's Ben Reilly, so it's a little complicated. But like, we don't actually hear him talk within his head or otherwise of like, wow, one of my close friends, even if they're not really like, it's like kind of like a work friend, essentially, superhero style. But still, like, they just fucking died as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And like half of my quote unquote colleagues just disappeared. It doesn't really get dug into that deep.
Well, and actually, I didn't even think of it until this now. This is Ben Reilly. He doesn't know any of them.
Well, no, he does.
He totally does. He just didn't know them for a chunk of 5 years.
Sure.
Like, all of their first meetings were Ben Reilly. As at this juncture, that's about to get re-retconned shortly.
Yeah.
And it ends with a dedication to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, quote, for creating the greatest universe of all.
The one we just destroyed.
The one we just destroyed.
We just killed them all, and now let's hand off these legendary characters over to some hacks that left us a few years ago. Granted, obviously, most rational comic fans are of the position like maybe they should have left, even though they ended up just making absolute shit for the most part. But still, the other thing is following Onslaught for about a year, like almost all of like 96 into 97, you have the Heroes Reborn. And on the tie-ins, we actually see, on one of these, we see a corner thing where it's like more Heroes Reborn information inside. But obviously, in our reprints, they don't include that extra material.
Right.
But
thank you.
all of those books were pretty much shit. You had Jim Lee drawing the Fantastic Four.
A horrible fit.
Written by, I think, Brandon Choi and Jim Lee. That's like his writing partner. And the Avengers was drawn by Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
Some pretty infamous stuff there. Or no, actually, no. I think Liefeld is Captain America.
Yeah.
And Avengers, I think, is Silvestri, I think.
Because Liefeld gets rid of the A on Cap's mask and replaces it with that stupid eagle thing.
Yeah, and the very infamous, like, gigantic torso
shot, yeah.
is Liefeld from Heroes Reborn. And then the Iron Man book was Will Sportaccio. And I don't know, Jeff Loeb was writing some of the books, and it was all shit. And then they all ran 12 issues with the Image teams, but like half the Image guys quit like halfway through, and then they just got other hacks. And then the very end, all the volumes were 13 issues, and the 13th issue of all of them was written by James Robinson, and it's a crossover with the Wildstorm universe.
Oh my god!
And the story's called World War III.
Oh my god!
Those are not reprinted.
What is with World War III being such a big story in the 90s? That's the last arc in Morrison's JLA.
Yep. And the kind of finale / spinoff of 52, but that's years later. So Heroes Reborn was total shit. And I'll also note Thor did not have his own book, but I already talked about that last episode in excruciating detail.
Mm-hmm.
And Heroes Reborn ends. There's Heroes Return. There's like a little mini crossover to bring everyone back. And then the Heroes
starring the mayor thing.
The Heroes Return books launch, and we have basically Marvel becomes good again. But in the absence, there are like 2 or 3 kind of interesting books. This is where we have Kurt Busiek on Thunderbolts, drawn by Mark Bagley, who I guess leaves Spider-Man to go do that. So are you guys hankering for more Onslaught reading?
No,
I don't care. I'm actually more interested in Jake Conovo. I'm interested in him than Onslaught.
Jake Paul, yeah.
Nope.
Sociopath? Or ten?
Part 3. What is it? Part 4 tomorrow.
I don't know. Okay.
I don't.
So next episode will be the culmination of the imposter lizard.
Oh, finally!
In the spectacular book.
That was like what, a year ago?
Well, he just showed up like 2 episodes ago.
No, I know. I was joking.
But we'll also read some ancillary stuff. I think one of them is an unlimited issue.
Oh no!
But it's split up into flashbacks. We'll see Gwen Stacy in flashback.
Is she going to be naked?
And we have a story in flashback to newlywed Peter and MJ.
Okay.
And then to top things off, the other throwaway thing that we will read next episode is a Ghost Rider team up.
No.
Okay, you have me. Now I'm interested.
I'm not.
You shouldn't be. This is not. The Ghost Rider is long. It's been bad for a while at this point.
Oh no!
Is it still Howard Mackie?
I don't know who. He doesn't write the issue. I don't know who actually writes the issue.
If it's not Howard Mackie, it's probably not going to be good.
If it is Howard Mackie, it's probably not going to be good.
But it's Danny, so it's probably going to be okay.
So tune in the next episode to discover whether Ghost Rider sucks at this point.
Wait. I just remembered something that happened in this episode. So, as some people know, I've been on a mini quest to find out what Peter Parker's major was in college.
Yes.
And in the smokestack, Ben called him Mr. Science Major, which is so upsetting because it doesn't help me at all.
No, not even remotely.
Well,
And
yeah.
I cannot get an answer. He's just a general science major. Even Mr. Nick Spencer would not give me an answer as to what Peter Parker's major was in college because nobody knows. He just knows everything about science, just in general.
Just all the science.
Right? Ask him on Twitter. I'm sure I'll get back to you.
All right, everyone, tune in to the next 20 episodes or however many to figure out whether we get any farther in our quest to learn Peter Parker's major.
We won't.
And thanks for watching.
Go enjoy red wine.